Welcome back here at Goldberg. Today we'll be talking about something of a speculative notion regarding how deception for women could well be an evolved defense mechanism. And I emphasize it's speculative, more research has to be done, so don't just run to the hills with your bro science. Nevertheless, I believe if more adequate research was performed, it would validate what I'm saying in this segment. And if you search why do women lie on Google, you typically get why people lie, or these romantic listicles that might hint at something evolutionary, but they don't really want to delve in because such a study would be immensely controversial. With my approach here, I'm not suggesting that men do not lie. However, I suspect outside of certified pathological liars, a man's more inclined to feel guilty over misleading someone. Whereas if a woman deceives because it benefits her maintenance of a certain station, access to resources, protects her reputation, or in fact her life, she doesn't necessarily view it as a bad thing at all. And I really believe with all the preponderance of content, oh, female nature, cracking the code, maintain frame, we're missing the point. That if this is, as I'm suggesting, innate, it might explain a hell of a lot more than your game courses and trying to be smooth and holding fast against her behavior and whatnot. So let us delve in. And so we start by going back to the time before history. You have Thag and Aguga. And Thag, he kind of likes Aguga. You might want to do some stuff in a nocturnal setting with her. But she's not too keen on him because he doesn't have a square jawline. His teeth are disgusting. So she really would like to turn him down. But there's a conundrum of sorts. She is, based upon sexual dimorphism, not as powerful, less aggressive. She probably can't take him head to head. And she might need to rely upon male relatives to protect her. But what if they're out of town? Or what if they're non-existent? What if they're all dead? Or they're old and lame? Or they're 5'4" yogi-obes? She needs to be very careful because if she says flat out, no, I don't find you attractive, he might take that leg of oak or whatever it is and say, take me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd. That's the end of Aguga. So she might have to give an indirect answer, flat out lie to him, try to get at a distance, try to shake him off, basically make him irritated to where he won't pursue her any longer. And the consequence, like I said, the baseball stuff, to this day, feminists complain about, oh, women are afraid of saying no to men because they feel there might be violence or anger in response. I genuinely can understand this. Most of us, if you've developed a thick skin when it comes to dealing with women and you get rejected, it's like, okay, whatever, thank you, next, you're no longer my pest. But especially dudes that are very insecure, like many guys in the manosphere, the ones who maybe they actually build up a lot of courage just to ask in the first place, or it's a coworker so they feel like it's going to be embarrassing afterwards. You never know what they might do. This has happened. It's by no means made up. So that could certainly explain the reticence of women, even on dating apps. If you think about a chick who's not interested in a guy but will decline to unmatch because maybe she's afraid, oh, if you are deliberate, you unmatch, which means not interested. What if he's stalking her? He's going to do something crazy. So it does seem to come together, even if it might appear rather far-fetched from a traditional, Abrahamic religion standpoint where as long as you're a virtuous person, it's all that matters. We'll discuss that later on in the video because I think it is something that can cut through even cultures and religions in ways that people don't realize. Now consider a different scenario. Thag and Aguga are in fact together and he goes off hunting. Meantime, she has some merriment with Chag and Tyrug and proceeds to become pregnant. He returns. Now, it is in her interest to persuade him that that child is his own, because if she doesn't, if she's, I'm gonna hit you blunt straight up with the truth, represent, those women were probably clubbed to death because they were annoying, and a lot of dudes have fragile egos, so that was probably how things evolved. Now, in the modern age, because of liberal equality, those females are becoming more prominent once more, but in the order of nature, it's not hard to believe it would have been more as I'm describing. And she has to persuade him about the paternity because otherwise she could be killed, nah, 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 or her child might be killed with the better genes from the other guys. She might lose access to her station if Thag is good at hunting, so he gets resources. She has to be very careful. So there's an incentive to lie, and it's not difficult to view that as something that would have been developed over time for survival. In fact, Susan Barash, it was not a perfect book. A lot of it was just interviews over Craigslist, but there are women who admit this. They say, I never told my husband about the fact that the child was not his because I wanted to maintain our family. I wanted his money. I never told him I cheated. I never told him that I was a prostitute before we were married. All these things. They can rationalize and find ways to cover up the most degenerate deceptions possible if it means it benefits them from the standpoint of keeping a guy, keeping resources, getting access to another guy. So you have to be careful with this. A lot of guys, they want to delve too much into, well, it's about values or morals, and they might miss the scientific aspects that are underpinning a lot of what really both sexes do, but in this case, what women will do almost reflexively. They don't even realize that they're pursuing such actions or exhibiting the behavior. Fast forward a bit, you get Joseph with Pop-Tart's wife. Now, what's going on in that scenario? Joseph has been elevated to an important position in Pop-Tart's organization, and his spouse, in this case, Pop-Tart's spouse, says, oh, nice young Chadberg, I want him to lay me down. Chadberg goes, that's disgusting, you belong to the streets, you belong to the Nile, you should be sitting at the top of the Great Pyramid at Giza. And she's like, oh, I'm not a hoe. He made these creepy advances on me. This almost gets Joseph killed. Why is it okay for her to sacrifice a dude's life? Well, because number one, her reputation. Number two, her life. Pop-Tart might get angry and have them both have their heads cut off. And also, Pop-Tart's a wealthy man. She doesn't want to lose access to those resources. There was a case just a few years ago in Connecticut where this bottom shelf Stromboli Becky had smoked some athlete, and then she was trying to get with this richer dude, and he was like, no, that's disgusting and degenerate. So she said, oh, that athlete assaulted me. She ended up going to prison, but usually they don't. So it's a very powerful tool if they're trying to scrub stuff from their past or make excuses for their own bad behavior. And you got to be aware of this as a man, otherwise you'll be turned into a simp very easily. I can also point to an anecdotal experience which validates some of the discussions in this video. As you know, I was interacting with this hijabi chick. I ended up nexting her and banging another girl, but that's besides the point. So on a Wednesday, we were discussing the possibility of hanging out Thursday or Friday. But by the end of this interaction over text, we had never clearly established when or where. So Wednesday evening, I say, hey, we good for tomorrow, this place, whatnot. She doesn't respond. Thursday morning, no response. Afternoon, evening. Then late Thursday night, she comes back with, oh, I'm sorry. I was at my job and I'm not allowed to have my phone. I was like, that sounds like BS, but who knows? Some people, they work in a vault, it's sensitive. I'm willing to give a chance, even though I don't exactly trust her by this point. Well, I don't respond to her message right away, and Friday morning she hits me up yet again. She goes, hey, are we still hanging out today? I say, due to the fact that you didn't respond on time, I actually just chose to go into work early because shekels are more important than hoes. Remember that, boyos. But we can chat on the phone. She's like, all right, that's fine. So we're having this conversation, and it was going okay. And she talks about, I've been at this company for a while. I could probably make more money elsewhere, but it's really chill because since the pandemic, I've been working from home. I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, I can get up anytime I want and, I have a great coffee machine. And then if I'm really tired, I can take a nap. And she shows me through Snapchat her desk with the monitors, and the bed is maybe 4 or 5 feet away. I'm thinking, okay, so you flat out lied about not being able to use your phone, right? And you say, why is this chick, who, mind you, is pretty devout, she wears the headscarf, all her pictures, they were covered up besides her hand and her face, even when she's in yoga pants, because she would say she's going to some, exercise class, she had a little tail flap covering the butt. So relatively modest, I imagine at least somewhat devout, and she can lie at the drop of a hat. I've seen this with devout Christian women, devout Hindu women. I would say Care Bear, but they tend to keep them away from fallen Care Bears like me. So if that can transcend race, culture, religion, it might be saying something about what I've discussed in this video. Because a lot of dudes say, as long as you get a trad wife, you're good. As long as you get a good girl. Well, even the good girls will lie to defend themselves, to protect their reputation, their interests. So just bear in mind, and let me know, what do you think? Do women lie? Is it an evolved evolutionary strategy, or do they just do it like anyone else does? Give me your thoughts.